Hello gamer girls, it's your boy Jackspektra today, and today we'll be going over Ezreal, a champ that's very fun, has a lot of skill ceiling, and is very popular. So, let's get into it. Some of you may have been wondering, who am I? I am a Challenger ADC main. I peaked rank 6 last season and rank 5 this season, currently aiming for rank 1, and I play professional League of Legends in currently the Spanish League. And I have amassed a lot of experience over the years. I've been Challenger since Season 7, used to be a Draven one-trick, now I play all ADCs. First of all, I want to start with the build that most people should be running. I think currently Trinity Force is your best mythic, and you'll be going man immune pretty much every game. Regarding Trinity Force versus Divine Sunderer recently got nerfed by 5 AD. I think that kind of pushed Trinity Force over the edge, in which case it should be like 90% your mythic. I think in games where you can't auto-attack very much and enemy has a lot of HP stackers, Divine Sunderer does have an argument for it, because once you get around 2k to 3k HP, it does heavily outdamage Trinity Force. But I think in most games you're playing versus a mix of squishies and you have a bit of a front line yourself, so you can do some auto-attacking here and there and spam some Qs, and then I think Trinity Force heavily outweighs it. Although, I think both are fine options, so if you really like Divine Sunderer, you definitely can run it and find good results. For a third item, after your Mythic and Man Immune, it's pretty situational. You can go for Ravenous Hydra for healing and AoE. You can go for Cyrilda for damage and slows, especially if they have some armor stackers, this is a good option. Or you can go for Frozen Heart if they have a lot of attack damage and you're scared of being killed. Then for fourth and fifth item, you kind of fill in the blanks. If you went Hydra as your third item, you probably go Cyrilda as your fourth. If you went Cyrilda as your fourth, maybe you go Hydra as your fourth. Or if you went Cyrilda, maybe you go Frozen Heart as your fourth. Or you go GA, or you can go Zhonya's. Ezreal is one of the few ADCs that actually uses Zhonya's really well. So that's an item you definitely should consider if you're versus champions that do all their damage at once. You know, high burst assassins. Because he has good AP ratios. And for boots, you're typically well off going Ionian boots in 99% of games. Maybe plated steel caps in some, or ninja tabi, whatever you want to call it, versus very heavy AD teams. But most of the time, Ionian boots will do you best. Regarding starting item, Dorn's Blade is the most popular and nearly has a 2% win rate increase over tier with nearly double the pick rate. So it looks like it's a more solid option. I really like tier just because it feels like you get to stack it faster and you get more sustain with the pots. I think both are pretty good options and both can do you well. I think in lanes where you think you'll be trading more and playing more aggressively, then D-Blade will maybe do you better. While in lanes you think you'll just be farming with Q and you won't really be getting to auto attack much, then tier will be the better option. But I think both are definitely solid. You can also go longsword 3 pots in lanes where you think you'll be fighting a lot early and you really need that early sustain. All three good options. But I think in the majority of the games, D-Blade will be the best option. Now for runes, I think Conqueror is by far the best. There are some people going lethal tempo, small minority, you can go it I guess. For Conqueror though, you go Presence of Mind, Bloodline, and then Coup or Cut Down, depending on if the enemy has HP stackers or not. Considering you are gonna get some HP from your Mythic, Cut Down has a lot less value on Ezreal than he has on other ADCs. And for secondary, I think Mana Flow and Transcendence is the best 99% of cases. I think Cookies and Cosmic Insight, kind of a scam. The cookies, they kind of suck. Very rare that you actually use them, in my games at least. Maybe if you play this hyper-aggressive, super fist-fight style, then, you know, it can work. Because Cosmic Insight is a good rune, but most of the time, I'm getting scammed by Boris selling my cookies for 5 gold. Thinking to myself, I wish I had literally any other rune. And you can do that as well. You could go Boots and Cosmic Insight, but at that point, I think Sorcery with Mana Flow and Transcendence is a bit better. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the tips and tricks that you can use while playing Ezreal. First of all, I want to talk about how to play lane level 1 and the thought process I think you should have while playing the lane. First of all, ideally you don't want to leash as Ezreal. In some games you will have to, of course. Ezreal's not the strongest early game champ, so a lot of the time the jungler do wants to be pathing away from him. But if you're allowed to not leash, what you want to do level 1 is you want to stand in front of your minions looking to Q them when they enter lane. If you can get that damage off, it can make a big difference in how the laning phase plays out. And even if you miss, it's not actually the end of the world at all. It's just free damage that you're missing out on. And then after that, you can use that to actually win the lane when normally you would be losing the lane. But if you get the push as Ezreal, your champion is literally double as strong as if you're getting pushed in. So getting the push as Ezreal can make huge differences in how your laning phase goes. Because most champions, their problem with minions is the fact that they deal damage to them. But with the Ezreal, it's not just that minions deal damage to him, they block his damage. So minions for Ezreal have so much more value than they do for most other ADCs that don't rely on skill shots. That's why when you have a big wave built up into an Ezreal, it's very hard for him to do pretty much anything to you, because he has to get through all the minions to actually do damage to you. Or do his full damage, at least. Other things to think about regarding how you play Ezreal. First of all, a habit that I see a lot of non-Ezreal players make when they play Ezreal is that they auto-attack before they Q when they're trading in minion waves. Now, why is this bad? This is really bad because it draws minion aggro, which means that the minions block your Q. So always when you're trading with someone and you're gonna look to Q, you want to Q and then auto-attack so that you don't pull minion aggro and the minions don't block your Q. The next thing about Ezreal is his E. His E is pretty nifty in that when you use it, your next spell, if you don't move your mouse, auto-targets towards where the E hit. So let's say you're chasing a stealthed target and you E in their general direction and it hits. If you then don't move your mouse and press your Q, you will Q where the E hit. This can be pretty useful when you're playing against stealth champions, but other than that, I don't think it has that much use, but it's a nifty trick that you can keep in mind, and you can use it if you want to. Another thing you have to know is that you can Q flash, makes your Q go off a lot quicker, useful for chasing down kills, and in general in terms of fighting. You can also flash while ulting. This can kind of confuse people and can trick them into getting hit by the ult, because it's kind of like throws people off. Another thing you can do is E flash, which makes it so that you essentially get your E and flash off both faster, and you cover a very long distance in a very short time frame. Useful for chasing people down or trying to finish someone off, but have to remember that you are using both your escape tools at once. So you have to know that where you're going is a safe place, because if you get stuck in a rough position without both your E and flash, you're probably dead. Now let's talk a little bit about Ezreal matchups. Ezreal is a very strong blind pickable champion. He has very few actual counters. He doesn't win most lanes, but he's kind of the type of champ that can pretty much survive anything. I'd say his hardest matchup is Kalista. If you're versus a good Kalista player, it can be really, really hard to play. They'll be able to dive you pretty much all the time, and if I was an Ezreal one trick and I played in high-low, probably I would ban Kalista. Another champion that I like picking into Ezreal is Kai'Sa. It's not that much of a hard-winning lane, but she's pretty much one of the few champs that can at all times of the game get onto Ezreal, which is usually the key to beating him. But for most matchups, you're just going to be looking to scale as the Ezreal. In some of them you can contest, but most of the time you don't have the early game power that a lot of other champions do. So you're just going to be happy farming at range and getting your 2-item power spike, because it's at that spike that you really start dishing out damage and you kind of destroy everyone. Now personally, I like to pick Ezreal when the enemy has an Ashe, or if I have a Bard, or a Yuumi, or a really hard poke support like a mage support like Seraph, then I usually default to Jhin or Ezreal. I think he works really well with these champions, and he's the type of champion that works really well with these roaming supports. So if you know you're going to have a Bard or a Pike, then Ezreal does a really good job at just surviving and not letting the enemy dive him. And he's kind of works similar to Ziggs in that fashion, that he can be really good with the roaming support because he just clears the wave before the enemy gets to actually make a play on him. He also works really well into these hard engaged comps, like if the enemy team has a Malphite, a Jarvan, a Samira, a Tristana. Both these ADC matchups are pretty good. They kind of need to go in and they need to get onto their target, and Ezreal actually is able to kite them, which most other ADCs aren't. So if you see the enemy is committed really hard to a big diving in hard engage comp, then Ezreal will do you really well. You just have to not play too cocky, and don't over rely on your E, and you should be fine. Now, the biggest difference I see between a really good Ezreal and an okay Ezreal is how aggressively they play later on in the game. A really good Ezreal will constantly be tiptoeing the line between inting and being, smurfing their pants off, right? They'll be Eing in and baiting the enemy into going on them, kind of, right? They'll be Eing at that max range where they can still hit a Q, but the enemy thinks, maybe I can go on him. Maybe he's inting with this E. And once you get to that point, you can really, really hard carry games with Ezreal. This is where you see the top tier Ezreal pro players really take off in their games. When they're able to reach that point where they're using their E, not just as a defensive tool, but they're using it as an aggressive tool, which it really can be a very potent one if you get good at using it. Of course, this will come with some growing pains trying to do this. You will E in and instantly die a lot of times, but it's about learning, about finding that thread, that exact point where you can be to do the most damage while still not being in threat, but making the enemy think you're in threat. And once you can find that, suddenly your Ezreal will go from, it's okay, I can win 50% of my games, to being, wow, this guy's unstoppable on Ezreal. Because Ezreal is one of those champs that has probably, in my opinion, the highest skill ceiling of any ADC. And that's what makes him so tempting to play. Because if you can land all your skill shots and you can play on that edge, you can be the strongest champion in the game. But at the other hand of the spectrum, if you're missing your skill shots, if you're Eing too far in, if you're not playing aggressively enough, you can be completely worthless. So for most people that are learning Ezreal, it's better to start out playing a bit safer, not necessarily always, testing the limit, but just hitting the Qs, getting the damage done, and using your E more as a defensive tool. And then once you get more comfortable, you start using it as more of an aggressive tool to actually get things done. So yeah, Ezreal is probably the most unique ADC in that he's more of a spellcaster rather than an auto attacker in the ADC class. And I think a lot of mid laners will enjoy the champion and find success in finding a champion. It's one of the champs that I see a lot of mid laners play as like their off-roll ADC champ. And I think it does good for that. I think the main thing that you have to get really good at on Ezreal is just hitting your skill shots. And of course it sounds, it's easy to say, hard to do. But that's the biggest thing that I'd say any Ezreal player should focus on is just, mouse accuracy, prediction, and consistency. If you can consistently hit skill shots, the champ is a completely different beast, because it has such a big effect in the fact that it also reduces your cooldowns. So if you hit a Q, you're not just doing more damage, you're getting your Q faster, your E faster, your ult faster, right? So you're getting to both do more damage in that aspect as well. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this Ezreal guide, and thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed, a like is very appreciated, and subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing more guides every week and full gameplay VODs from Challenger EU West. Currently aiming to get rank 1 and streaming every day on twitch.tv, so come tune in there as well. And thank you guys for watching. Bye!